that.
Okay, I'd like to open the Monday, March 8th, 2021 Littleton Conservation Commission meeting. And Amy?
All right, the town of Littleton began conducting remote participation Zoom meetings pursuant to Governor Baker's emergency order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law on March 9th, 2020. Since that time, unanticipated legal concerns relating to the open meeting law have been brought to our attention by the town clerk. Those concerns were supported by the Attorney General's office and confirmed by town council. In response to these concerns, the town will implement the following changes, which in no way prohibit any member of the public from participating in discussion and sharing information during a public meeting, and will ensure that all listeners and participants have equal access to this meeting. People that join the Zoom meeting are set so their microphones are muted. If you call in by phone, please use *9 to mute or unmute your phone so the meeting can occur in an orderly fashion. We ask that people who join keep their microphones on mute so background noises do not interfere with the meeting. If you wish to participate in the meeting, please use the raise your hand function available on Zoom, or if you called in by phone, dial *9, which will activate the raise your hand function. The meeting host will notify the chairperson of the raised hands, and the chairperson will determine whether and when to allow public comment. When called upon, participants should unmute, then state their name and address. After speaking, we request the participant return their microphone back to mute. Back to you.
Okay, so I assume we're supposed to deal with the stormwater bylaw regulation proposed amendments from Rebecca. Is that
If we could, because she has to go down to the select board after this.
okay? Well, I guess Rebecca, you're on.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Rebecca Lacey from Town Council's office, Mearis and Harrington. I'm here to briefly discuss and answer any questions on the draft proposed revisions to Littleton's stormwater management and erosion control bylaw, which are currently being circulated to the select board, the planning board, and the conservation commission for comment. The eventual goal is that this will be the amendment to the bylaw will be a warrant article on the spring town meeting warrant. Excuse me. So hopefully you all got the short memo accompanying the red line version of the bylaw. And essentially, these are changes that are necessary to comply with the most recent updated version of the permit that governs Littleton's discharges of stormwater through its storm drain system to surface water bodies in Littleton. The permit originally came out from EPA and Mass DEP in 2003. Littleton then subsequently adopted the stormwater management and erosion control bylaw in order to comply with that 2003 permit. The permit has now been reissued with heightened requirements, and so it's necessary for Littleton to amend its stormwater bylaw and regulations to impose these heightened requirements on projects greater than an acre that require a stormwater permit that EPA requires Littleton to impose the stormwater permit on. Many of these, so basically there are just a few increased requirements in terms of the stormwater management standards that developers of projects larger than an acre will need to meet. They're going to be required to retain a greater volume of water on site as part of a storm at certain storms, and use best management practices to reduce pollution, phosphorus pollution, and total suspended solids going into water bodies. And emphasize low impact development and a couple of other heightened standards along those lines. Most of those specific heightened standards will be imposed by revising the regulations that the planning board has promulgated to implement the bylaw, but a few changes do need to be made to the bylaw itself. So that's what this memo covers, and those changes are shown in this red line version of the bylaw. And I just want to highlight that the these don't necessarily directly impact the Conservation Commission because the planning board will, has been the permitting authority for this stormwater permit and will continue to be. The way in which this most intersects with what you guys do is that projects that the existing bylaw exempts projects that need a wetlands permit and that come before you for need a wetlands permit for which stormwater review is required. So essentially, the bylaw provides that if the Conservation Commission is already doing stormwater review, those projects can be exempted from this requirement to get a permit from the planning board. That exemption needs to be removed because the standards imposed by the Wetlands Protection Act, by DEP's wetlands regulations, are no longer meet the heightened standards that EPA is requiring towns to impose. So it's no longer enough just to hold projects to these standards, to the Massachusetts stormwater standards. We need, some of these requirements, the retention requirements, low impact development requirements go above and beyond what the wetlands regulations and the Mass stormwater standards currently require. So we need to remove the exemption for projects subject to wetlands permitting. And so essentially all projects, all construction projects disturbing more than an acre of land, whether new development or redevelopment, will now all be subject to this permit requirement for a stormwater permit from the planning board. And that will allow the town to impose these requirements that EPA is requiring. So the removal of the exemption for projects permitted by the Conscom is kind of the most directly relevant to all of you. The other bullets are a little bit more sort of the miscellaneous changes that are being made. It might make more sense for me to just take questions rather than walk through all those specific bullets. So why don't I at this point open it up to any questions?
I got a question. We do have a major project on the table that hasn't been approved. Now, would that affect that project? If this gets passed at town meeting, is that going to affect that project if it isn't signed off on?
Good question. We did, one of this, I can't remember who, but one of the staff members did, when we were talking about this with town staff members, someone did ask that question. And we had a discussion. So we wanted to clarify and make very clear kind of when the cutoff is that a project would or wouldn't be subject to these, to this amendment and to these heightened requirements. And so the draft language that we came up with is, okay. So the bylaw will take effect by law once it is passed by town meeting, approved by the Attorney General's office, and then published by the town clerk. So that takes a few months after town meeting. But since that date is unknown, and since there will be a need to for the planning board to then promulgate its new amendments once the new bylaw is in effect, what the team came up with was to include a provision that with a specific date in the amendment. So it says, so regardless of exactly when the Attorney General approves the bylaw, what this proposed language says is the amendment shall not apply to projects for which a complete application for a stormwater permit is submitted to the planning board, or a complete notice of intent is submitted to the Conservation Commission by October 1st, 2021, as long as the permitting process is not suspended for a significant period of time by the proponent. So that's kind of what we came up with for a proposed bright line. I mean, that's the bright line and the date that made sense to the team that was discussing it. It's certainly open to suggestions of doing it a different way, but that's the way that we have come up with for now.
Is there a way to tighten that time frame that you just referenced in terms of an extension or a prolonged period of time? Because some might think that's like 10 years versus we might think it's, a year. I can see with these continuations that's going to just continue to cycle through. I just don't want to be ambiguous, and I would prefer to have a set date, like within 6 months or 1 year. I would not want to see it go past 1 year.
That's an excellent comment, and I think that's a good suggestion. So
You mean that if the existing permit process is open for more than 6 months or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, what if someone just stalls and they just put it on hiatus and things really change, there's no way to capture that loss. So I could be wrong, but I just don't like seeing things put out for not a specific time period.
Well, another question is, what if they're dealing with court cases that involve these projects that gets waylaid for
I don't
as
think
much as a year?
Yeah, and all the more reason I think that they should be able to say that. Now, Rebecca, what happens if ownership of the site changes hands? I think that they should fall under the new regulations.
So,
Because you could be looking at, if we look at Amazon, we went from one plan to another plan. So if we're trying to make things better, let's make some stop gaps that they then have to actually fall under new guidelines. Just something to think about.
Well, with Amazon, that was a new notice of intent. Well, you amended the one for the existing building, but a new one for the new building. But usually, Rebecca, if I'm wrong, the order condition goes with the land more than it goes with the owner. If the project doesn't change,
right.
then basically the project is sold.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So that's the case. So yeah, it seems to me that the issue of concern would more be changes to the project as opposed to changes in ownership per se. Is that right, Sarah? Or
That sounds better.
that's the concern.
Yep.
So yeah, I'll put some thought into tightening that up, because so I'll think about putting a year, like as long as the permitting process is completed within a year, and then also something about it has to be the permit, associated with the original NOI, not that you can, like, you filed one NOI way back when, and now you keep amending your project and filing, maybe new NOIs, but you're saying that you have like a permitting freeze based on that original NOI. We try to tighten up the language so that's not possible.
Because extensions
Before we go
can.
too much. Sorry.
No, go
before we
ahead.
Too much along these lines. I'm wondering why we aren't considering changing our regs, which are, you would just have to have a hearing instead of a town meeting to change. Once you have that change so that they have to get 2 permits, it's going to be very difficult to undo that unless you go to town meeting again. Whereas if we changed our regs to mandate that they meet the MS4 requirements, it would be much more flexible, and you won't have to go through all of this town meeting permissions. And you wouldn't have people have to get 2 permits.
Not all projects go through Conscom. Some projects only need to go through planning board, and they still will impact stormwater. So that I'm
just,
glad we're looking at this.
Well, but she's saying it's just projects that have a permit from us are exempt. So they just would have to come, ones that have to come through us won't have to get 2 permits. That's all I'm saying.
So, Anna, that certainly would be another approach. Instead of removing the exemption from this bylaw, we could keep it in this bylaw as long as you guys were able to impose the heightened standards yourselves through the wetlands bylaw. I would just need to. Sorry.
We can't impose them through, we have conversations all the time about how the Massachusetts stormwater standards are painfully out of date, and some applicants are, especially if they're in a sensitive area, or especially if they're seeking a waiver, are willing to look at the more relevant stormwater standards. So we do have those conversations all the time about really needing to look at more relevant stormwater data to get a better project design. I'm wondering, there are plenty of projects that can impact stormwater, and the town really is on the hook. That's the intent, I'm assuming, is the town is on the hook for this MS4 permit, and anything that goes in our storm drains is something that the town is on the hook for, even if it's a project, even if it's a homeowner, even if it's some other entity. So it seems to me tightening this up so that, everybody is properly contributing to clean stormwater with which the town has to pay for. It seems to me that projects smaller than an acre that, may have significant potential for erosion or significant land disturbance should be considered as well.
So a couple, I guess, a few things in there. So one thing is for this go around for amending the stormwater bylaw, I'm making the same recommendation to all of the towns. It's like all of the Eastern Massachusetts towns basically are subject to this, and most of them are doing these amendments at this spring's town meeting. And my recommendation is for this round, just of amendments to the stormwater bylaw, just stick narrowly to what's required by these MS4 permit changes, just because like those have to get through, or the town could be subject to, enforcement by EPA. And so I feel like best to separate that out from any, anything else in which the town wants to be, more ambitious, more protective and so forth. I would suggest postponing that discussion for a later town meeting, just to make sure that we can get this these necessary revisions done about, and essentially, my recommendation to the town would be, there shouldn't be too much debate about adopting these because like they're legally required. So I think it's just clearest to, for this go round, stick to just those legally required requirements, kind of, no more and no less. And then talk about sort of, broadening the applicability, heightening standards even more, what various approaches down the road. So that's one thing regarding expanding the breadth of the bylaw. In terms of, so going back to Anna's comment about could we just have everyone, have a little bit more one-stop shopping for folks that are already getting stormwater review from the Conscom. I was trying to quickly pull up the wetlands regs. And I think I'd have to look at the wetlands bylaw, but I think that it is probably the case that the wetlands bylaw does give you sufficient authority that you could impose those stormwater standards or those heightened stormwater requirements just by amending your regs without having to amend the wetlands bylaw. I just need to double check that. So that's certainly, yeah, I guess I would want to know what the other members of the commission, whether the other members of the commission agree that they would like to see those projects be able to just get the one permit, or would you like all those projects to go before the planning board and all get sort of the exact same stormwater permit? I guess a couple things I would say are, my understanding from talking to Maren and Amy is that because this applies, the EPA requirement and thus the stormwater bylaw only applies to projects disturbing more than an acre, that it's really, that's really a smaller subcategory of these larger projects, and that almost all of them are already getting some type of stormwater review from the planning board because there's some kind of special permit or something that's triggered, or subdivision regulations. So they're already getting some type of stormwater review from the planning board, so that wrapping in that additional specifically stormwater permit into the planning board review process isn't another huge layer of review. It's more just stormwater review is already happening. We're just going to have, the performance standards will be higher, but it's not like another layer of red tape. It's just, holding you to a higher standard in this review that's already being done. So I think it's sort of just a policy decision for the town and for the boards. It's sort of an equally legally valid approach either way. So I guess I'd be interested in comments from others. No, no strong feelings other than.
Well, I would say that right now we almost entirely depend on the engineering stormwater review that the planning board contracts with a third party. I think we've only need to do it once because planning board wasn't involved for some reason. And for us to have to go out. Well, and I'm not too sure, it's like Rebecca said, there's too many projects that wouldn't also need to go to planning board anyway. And they roll all their permits sort of into one action.
So I can think of a recent A&R project that probably could have used a lot more robust stormwater review. So it seems like if there's not a good reason to do so, I would prefer Rebecca's initial approach, versus taking something out of our regs, because there certainly will be some situation we didn't think of, and then, the project falls through the cracks.
Well, it wouldn't be taking something out of our regs. It would just be actually increasing our regs, like expanding our regs to include the MS4 requirements, which I don't know how difficult that would be. But something to consider.
I mean, as you say, it's within the authority. I mean, I would just need to double check this, but assuming that our legal opinion is that the bylaw confers sufficient authority, then it would just be, as you said, the question of just having the commission holding a hearing and adopting revised regulations, which is easy enough to do. So Julie, it shouldn't be, as Anna says, it shouldn't be the case that anything would fall through the cracks, because let's see, we could tweak the wording to make sure that essentially it would be, the exemption from the stormwater bylaw would only apply to projects that were getting this full stormwater review subject to the more heightened standards under the wetlands bylaw from the Conscom. So there shouldn't be anything that falls through the cracks. I guess one thing I would say to you, Anna, is in addition to the heightened standards, there's a sort of a lot of stuff that's already in the bylaw that we then have to add. And actually, as I'm not positive that all of it can be done under the authority of the wetlands bylaw. There's a lot of sort of enforcement provisions and provisions about as-built plans and sort of a lot of detail and long-term maintenance that is all currently in the bylaw that would have to also be somehow put into the wetlands reg. So, that's a consideration. But I don't know if we would want to be, involved in enforcement, a huge amount of enforcement under the MS4 and everything like that. So that is a consideration for us, definitely. There definitely are. I think there are some. I don't think it's a huge extra burden for the applicants to all have to go get that stormwater permit from the planning board, because they're mostly going to the planning board already anyway. And I do think there are some benefits to just having it be one consistent that from the town's perspective, it's easy to know and to be able to say to, an EPA enforcement attorney, all of these projects are going through the same process. We're subjecting them, one board subjecting them to the same standards. We have an enforcement procedure. We have a tracking procedure. There are some pros to just doing it that way. I guess I would probably recommend to stick with that approach. I guess mostly because of the advantages, and because I don't think that there are many projects for which it's really going to be a meaningful additional burden. So that's kind of my take.
Yeah, I'd like to second kind of Julie's talking point there too. I think the intent is a little bit clearer too, that the whole, from the planning board, the highest, position, raising the bar. And like we said, we get these kind of odd things showing up at conservation, and just to have it already out there that the intent is that this is going up to, a higher bar, that I think that even helps us set the case when we have our meetings. We can point to other things and say, look, we've got this across the board, elevated, regs that are being implemented. And then, it's the importance to the whole town. I think that sends a good, clear message.
So then I'm thinking about very small lots that are waterfront on pretty heavily impacted quality-wise ponds that aren't 1 acre. So that wouldn't change our process at all. They would still need to go through, even though they wouldn't be going to the planning board. How would that change our stormwater process with those types of sites?
Oh, not at all. I mean, everything that you guys currently require would all still be required. It's just the only some applicants now that don't currently need to also get another permit will in the future need to also get another permit. But nothing is lessened in terms of the projects that you guys are going to be reviewing, the standards that you are holding them to, like none of that is changing. Yeah.
But I would say that if there are projects that are less than 1 acre in general that the Conscom would want to hold to a higher standard, we could add that into the wetland regulations.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like the design storm or anything, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's what we're going to continue to see more and more. And those are our biggest challenges are those lots.
The smaller lots, yeah. Yeah, so we can definitely, I know I should probably move on and go over to the select board, but yes, that's certainly something we can talk about, put me on the agenda in the future to talk about revising the commission's regs to expand stormwater requirements for some of these sites that have, proven to be problems. We can certainly talk about that. I'm ready whenever you are. All right, I should go over to the select board and make sure I'm not late for those guys. So feel free to email me with any further comments or questions. Just don't copy the rest of the board, but individual communications to me are okay. My email is on the memo, and there's still going to be further iterations of this as it goes. It's going to the select board tonight. It's going to the planning board next week. So it'll continue to be, moving parts up until there's a motion is actually made at town meeting. So there will be further opportunities to comment and provide input. So thanks for giving me the time and thanks for the great comments. And I will see you guys later.
Okay,
Thanks, Rebecca.
Have a good night.
thank you.
Good night.
All right, we got to open a public hearing, notice of intent, Old Lake Street, U 12-21 Mass D Field, file number 204-929, construction of a new house and associated work. Somebody want to speak to that?
Yes, good evening. This is Tim McGuire from Goddard Consulting. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep. Good evening, everyone. Again, for the record, my name is Tim McGuire. I am here. I'm a wetland scientist from Goddard Consulting here on behalf of Ron Raffi for this project. Would it be best if I did a screen share to show my presentation plans?
Yes.
Okay. 1 second, please. All right, can everyone see that?
Yep.
Great. Okay, so the location of this proposed work, it's at the corner of Lake Drive and Ivy Road. I believe the frontage is off of Lake Drive. We've got a small 0.2 acre lot here. We don't have any wetlands on site within the property boundaries here. You can see in red, but there is bank of a ponded area / BVW to the south here. And this wetland system here, this is not Long Pond. This is just a little ponded area, BVW, kind of across the road from Long Pond. And with that, an intermittent stream channel going on the western edge of what you can see here with buffer zone pouring onto our site. So what we are proposing here is the construction of a small single family house within, completely outside of the buffer zone. All work is being kept outside of the 50-foot buffer zone. The only work occurring within the jurisdiction of the commission would be portions of the retaining wall here, which are shown in this light pink within the 100-foot buffer zone, and the septic system shown in blue here, with this orange line being the limit of work. So essentially the entirety of the limit of work is, I think at its closest, it's 62 feet from the wetlands. The retaining wall right here at its closest point is 70 feet from the wetlands, and the closest edge of the septic tank is approximately 81 feet from the wetlands. We already have received a comment from an abutter, expressing some concerns for the construction of the septic system within such close proximity to Long Pond there to the south. And we just want to point out that that septic system is approximately 300 feet from Long Pond, and again, about 80 feet from the wetlands here. We have some passing test pits up here in the northern portion of the site, but with the interest of maintaining open space as close to the wetlands as possible, we've shown the house and all the impervious surface associated with that in the driveway completely outside of the buffer zone, further away from the wetlands, whereas the septic system would be the closer part to the wetlands here. So I believe that is all for the initial presentation. If there's any questions from the commission, I'd be happy to entertain them.
Is the Ivory Road a paper road?
I'm sorry, say again?
Is the Ivy Road a paper road at this point in time?
It's
I'm
a dirt
not-
road.
I'm sorry, I think someone answered that.
Yeah, Jim, it's a dirt road.
Yeah, it's a dirt road.
Yeah, so the frontage of the property is off of Lake Street there to the left. But yes, Ivy Road is a dirt road.
Wait, you're saying the frontage is on Lake Drive?
So the current the property, if you look at the property card, is referred to as 0 Lake Drive. So although it's at the corner here, that's kind of what I mean by the the frontage there. Although we are going to facilitate access to the site via Ivy Road.
Oh, even after constructed, it's going to have a Lake Drive address.
After construction, it will have an Ivy Road address.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How deep was groundwater in those southern test pits?
I do not have that right off the top of my head. I think if I can swap the screens to the detail page that showed the. Can you guys see that if I swap that, or do I have to do another screen share?
It kind of blurred out. You may just have to do another screen. It did something, but it didn't switch.
Yeah, sorry about that. Hold on one second. I haven't found a good way to kind of swap between screens while doing the screen share. So so here's the test pit data. The groundwater. Yeah, we're looking at like 2 feet, 3 feet for most of these, close to 4 feet. These were approved by the, there was a variance required by the Littleton Board of Health. We did have that already.
It looks like you have quite a few 24 inches to groundwater. And when, what time of year? Oh, August 11th, 2016.
March. That one, yeah, March and August.
2014 is what I'm seeing.
14.
Were the originals.
Data's 7 years old.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, August, I'm just looking at the August, even August, September, the driest times a year. So you would expect groundwater to be higher, at other times of the year. And I do want to point out, although the property is 300 feet from Long Pond, there's no doubt that the groundwater has some connection with Long Pond, because we know that septic systems lined all around surface water bodies impact the water quality. So that is something that, is widely published, which is why everyone in the lake neighborhoods, when they redo their septic, needs, end up with, more advanced technology, which is available now, or the built up systems. So I just want to make sure we're talking about that accurately.
Can someone refresh me how long this data is accurate for? I didn't think that you could hold data this old from 2014 and 16. If the engineer would like to address that.
Sure. So I did not do the test pits. That was Markey and Ruben. I wasn't part of that process, but I do know that these were recently approved in January, I believe, by the Littleton Board of Health.
Well, at least the 2014 is before the drought in 2016. So hopefully it's more accurate than maybe even the more recent data. But
that's also March, Anna. Although I guess, yeah, so maybe that would be better if it was warm enough.
I guess I'm wondering, the wetland that's close to this, is that the stormwater retention wetland park?
Let me bring that back up.
Because I'd like a zoom out, to see where around the lake this is.
Sure. So this is the orthophoto view from GIS. This is the wetland area. So note that this is the Mass GIS wetland layer. This is not the delineation that was done and shown on the site plan. So this is Long Pond here, and you can see there's the land owned by the commission here in between. And this is the ponded area / bordering vegetated wetland that really goes up to here. I believe we flagged.
When was that flag?
Has that wetland been created as a garden or whatever? It almost looks like it's where Pop's stand was at one point.
It is the stormwater retention area for Long Pond for 20% of the stormwater of the lake.
But there are wetlands associated with what was created.
Yes,
There are natural wetlands associated with what was created.
that's right.
I think Kyle was trying to ask when the wetlands line was flagged.
Last spring, I believe.
Just to bring up, I mean, the being more than 50 feet away from the wetland is what we usually approve. So I don't.
What was that wetland area? Is that the garden, the rain garden that we wanted to build?
No, it's more than that. It's the actual. It has 2 lagoons and with a weir in between, where the stormwater comes in and settles out. It was constructed by the Clean Lakes Commission.
Okay.
I think it's worthy of a site visit for sure.
Sure, absolutely. We, on behalf of the applicant, we'd be happy to facilitate a site walk with the commission. I would definitely want to be in attendance for that. So if that's the direction that the commission wants to move in, just keep me posted on that. Or if you'd like to set one up right now, I'd be happy to schedule one right now.
Well, is it still snow covered down there?
I don't know for certain. I live in the other direction, but maybe
At least partially, I would assume. But maybe not after this weekend.
Who owns the lot just to the lake side of it?
the lot just south of the locust.
Yeah.
That's owned by the commission, and I think that's shown on our site plan here. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Tim, it looks like the site is currently pretty heavily vegetated. Can you speak to the vegetation clearing plans for the lot?
Yeah, certainly. There is, it is a fairly well vegetated site. There's some invasives out there. There is Oriental bittersweet and a little bit of rose as well. But it's just it's just a pretty average upland area with your oaks and other upland vegetation, bright upland soils on site, and then you move into the wetlands well off site here on the Conservation Commission's land. Did you want more specifics on the specific vegetation in particular? I can pull up the wetland border report.
Yeah, I was mostly interested in the large existing trees that would potentially be coming down with the proposed work.
Sure. In the majority of those, that would be coming down would be outside of the buffer zone here on, about 2/3 of the site. And those, there certainly would be some vegetation removal required. But, we are going to leave this area here to naturally revegetate. And there was a question Amy thought might be brought up about this kind of area in between the retaining wall and limit of work here. That's only about 8-ish feet. It's not going to be much room for really anything else, so it's likely also going to just revegetate.
I thought a lot of the vegetation was cleared when you were doing the test pits, and also wasn't there a well put in there, PVC piping at one point?
I am not certain on the answer to that. Again, I wasn't present for the test pits. That was Marky and Ruben who facilitated that, and I don't believe they're on the call tonight.
And I think you're right. I recall maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, pretty much everything being cleared.
Yes.
I'm not sure if anything went inside the buffer zone, but at least the upland portion, I recall like trees being cut and things being cleared. Actually, there was a piece of machinery that sat there for quite a while. So.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, a front end loader or something. Yeah, it was sitting there for a long time.
Oh, is this going to have town water or have to have a well? I don't see any well on here.
I don't know if it was ever formally put in or why there was a PVC pipe sticking out there close to the property line.
Huh. Yeah, I can certainly look into that further and hopefully come up with some answers for you if we end up doing the site walk.
Tim, is it on town water or is there a well in there somewhere?
I believe it's going to be on town water. I'm not certain on the status of an existing well.
There isn't much space for a well to go in and leach and have the leaching be away from the leaching field.
Yeah, it is a very small site and a small house being proposed. So I guess the good news on that is that there's really not much more room within the buildable envelope that we'd be able to kind of expand the house there.
Did this go through ZBA as well? Or are you at required setbacks?
I believe we're at the required setbacks.
Okay.
For zoning.
Just curious.
The variance we needed was for the septic system, which we got.
What was your variance for the septic?
That was Marky and Ruben had handled that, but we received it. I think it was due to the lot size.
And where are you going to have to store soil? Or are you going to take it all off as you go?
I think there's some information on that in the construction notes. You mean like for a staging area on site during construction?
Yes. Where I assume you're going to dig a foundation?
Yeah, absolutely. It would all be kept outside of buffer zone.
Outside of the 50 or the 100?
Outside of the 100.
You guys want to set up a site walk, or you can do that later?
And I also say, Mr. Chairman, I think there's a bunch of abutters here who may or may not have comment.
Yeah.
Mr. Ham has his hand raised.
Guess I'd like to hear from a couple of them anyway. Who wants to be first?
Is Rudham?
Yeah, this is Rudham. I live at 11 Lake Drive, diagonally across both Lake Drive and Ivy Road from here. And just a couple of observations here. I was involved and on the Clean Lakes Committee when we were working with the Water Department and the state with grant monies to create the Wetlands Park, including both the forebay, the retention basin, and the plantings around the park. It was quite a process and a real asset to the lake. And I do want to reiterate what Anna had said, in that the significant amount, I believe it was about 20 or a little more % of the water from the watershed does run through that and directly into the lake after settling out any nutrients that it could within that. And some of the testing that's been done since that has proven it to be very successful at cleaning the water going into the lake. So I think it is dangerous to think that we're risking adding more pollutants to the edge of the lake on a body that is flowing directly into there. Another comment that I had or would like to bring up is the wetlands delineation. I'm certainly not a wetlands engineer, and I don't know, I wouldn't know how to put the blue flags out in exactly where they belong based on the plant types. But I find it very interesting that the flags that are there now are directly up against the standing water of the forebay and do not include any ground above that, which certainly was planted with upwards of, the park as a whole was planted with upwards of $7,000 worth of wetlands plants following its construction, including a border around all of the standing water, which should be, beyond what, beyond the standing water, which is what I believe the dimensions here are taken from for both the 50-foot and the 100-foot buffer zone. So that's something I'd just like to be a little clearer on how that was established. And then,
Yeah, certainly. I can address that. And thank you for your concerns. So essentially wetlands under state law are delineated based on you need both 50% or more wetland indicator species present, along with hydric soils that show, indicators of water movement throughout them. So standing water does not necessarily determine the presence of a wetland, but you would need both those, the soils and the wetland species. So in the particular areas that, maybe of question, and we can absolutely take a look at that with the commission on the site walk, but that's kind of how that's determined under state law.
yeah, yes, I don't pretend to know that. I was just involved in the purchasing and planting and design of this, which did include wetlands plantings well beyond the standing water towards where the retaining wall is proposed here. So I just wanted that to be flagged as something that the commission can notice on the site walk. To your point on water, there is water on Lake Drive, at least as far as Ivy Road above there. So bringing piped water, city water, to the site wouldn't be a huge stretch with underground piping on Lake Drive, if that was where you folks were headed with this, just to help on a local comment. It's also
Amy, have you looked at this site?
interesting that a couple of years ago, when this was first brought to the Board of Health, they declined to rule on it until the Conservation Commission had made their ruling, because it did require so many variances and so much input from the Conservation Commission. So this is the first time I'm hearing that it was already approved by the Board of Health, and that certainly surprised me some, but I don't know that. It went to the Board of Health initially back in February of 17, when they, as I say, they declined to make a ruling pending the Conservation Commission's comments.
Tim, are you aware of the I'm assuming you are. Did you look at the disturbed wetlands? Because obviously it can be, if the area is disturbed, your hydric soils are disturbed, and so you wouldn't see the reduction layers or features that you would anticipate seeing. And then also what the gentleman just spoke about with planting wetlands plants, that to me, I wasn't involved at that point either, but you don't plant wetlands plants with the goal of restoring a wetlands area if you don't have, and I'm sure you know this, I'm sure you work on restoration as well. If you don't have the conditions consistent with, being able to establish wetlands planting. So I'm just wondering if you were previously aware of any of that, and if you, had considered, the disturbed wetlands assessment instead.
Sure. So the wetlands were delineated based on the existing conditions. Like I said, based on hydric soils versus upland soils and wetland percentages of wetland indicator species, the exact plantings, quantities of which, and soils are outlined in the wetland border report there. That's what would, I understand that wetland replication areas are planted with the intention of becoming wetlands. Unfortunately, in my experience there, I've seen several that, portions of which or in their entirety just revert back to uplands due to what could be a variety of factors, being that they weren't graded down far enough, or that it just various site-specific conditions. So I'm not sure which specifically resulted in the wetland line being put where it is, but where it was put by our firm was based on the criteria in the Wetland Protection Act and the Wetland Delineation Manual based on vegetation and hydric soils.
Yeah, I would follow up on that and say that the banks of this created wetland or created retention basin, I should say, are pretty steep, and they may have planted wetland plants with a hope or thought that they might survive, even though the banks are fairly steep. But they converted to what is naturally there according to how wet the soil is, and may not have retained their wetland quality around the edge there because it is so steep.
So do we want to set a site walk?
There is one more person had his hand raised, Mr. Banks.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, well, thank you. I also want to thank Rudd for his work that he's done, because I know that that area that the Conservation Commission owns there now is quite a nice area to walk. In fact, my dog and I walk it every single day, including the walkway, which is about halfway between where that piece of the settling pond is shown. Actually, it kind of comes right across where the word Conservation Commission says. And I know that many times of the year, it's pretty damp, pretty wet there. As Anna mentioned, there are some wetland plants around the edge, but unfortunately, in some areas, the invasives have kind of caught up to them and taken them out. But the area does stay pretty wet down in that area, especially when you're walking right along the edge by the walkway. In fact, if you do the site walk and you notice the pavers that are in place there, the water does go through it, but unfortunately, this time of year, it's pretty much sitting on top of it. As we live right across the road there from Ivy, and we know that on Ivy Road, and I don't think the gentleman is there, that he goes up and down our side of the road daily, almost clearing the culvert out to make sure the water doesn't run across Ivy Road. And one of my concerns is where the buildup is going to be, is that, the ground's going to be raised in that area. And that's going to keep more of that water on Ivy Road, which everyone mentioned. It is a dirt road. I know that the gentleman down the road had thrown some gray stone down to kind of give it some support and keep it from running away. I know Keith Nixon does the plowing, and he does a great job of keeping the snow out of that gutter so that the water doesn't go across there. And, part of my concern is the fact that, the water does come down Ivy Road. It does go into this lot. It does settle on this lot before it gets across into the conservation area. It is a very small lot. Like I said, I've walked by it every single day. It has become overgrown since they have cleared out before. That pipe that was sticking out of the ground, I don't know if I should say or not, but I have walked over to it to see what it is. And it looks like a PVC pipe sticking out of the ground. I don't know if they use it to see if there's any water in the ground or not, but you know, from the distance, when they did dig those holes, you could see standing water in them from the road, from Lake Drive as you're walking along. And I mean, it's not that much of a pitch looking out in that direction. So I'm just, you know, with the amount of water that's in that area, as well as what Rudd said, you know, the lake is getting used quite a bit by townsfolks. I know we have some houses that are closer on the lake. You know, when we had our septic system put in, and we have now a hump in our yard, we had one of the Presby systems put in because my wife and I were very concerned how close we are to the lake. We wanted to make sure the water that was, you know, coming out of the system at the end was as clean as possible, and that's why we went with a Presby system. But you know, where they want to stick this house, it's 0.2 acres, pretty small. They're going to be covering up, you know, majority of it with, you know, with construction. And I just don't think the lake needs it. I don't think the lake area needs it. You know, I know behind us, they built up a couple big houses as well. And there's not much empty land around. I know there's one piece across the street, and then there's the field that the town owns just across from where the retention pond is on Lake Drive there as well. That's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, and if I can just in response to that, yeah, thank you very much for your comments. And you know, essentially, you have some concerns regarding the quantity, the portion of the lot that's going to be developed. So the only impervious surface that's going to be associated with this project is going to be the footprint of the house here, only about 1,000 square feet, and this little bit of driveway here, both of which are outside of the review of the Conservation Commission. And your concerns are valid, but it's worth noting that you know, there's no, in terms of impact to where the water is going to go on site, as it in its existing conditions, it's currently pitched down gradient towards the wetland. And you know, there's no wetland fill that's going to result in flooding. There's no significant impacts to buffer zone. The only impacts to there's no impacts to the 50-foot buffer zone. And you know, we've got the retaining wall put in here to keep you know, to kind of compensate for that raised elevation associated with the house and such.
Yeah, I understand that, you know, the garage, the house where it's going to be built. I mean, obviously right now there's nothing on there. You know, so putting that, you know, I don't know what percentage it is, but that percentage of land is making it impervious to water. But as well as, you know, the septic itself. I mean, there's things being put on the ground. Is you know, the retention wall that's going to be built. That'll change the groundwater flow in the area as well. I'd be concerned of what the little house next door, what their concern would be, because you know, that's, to me, it looks like that's where the water is going to get pitched back towards. You know, that kind of concerns me a little bit, because you know, I know the gentleman that owns that place put a lot of work into that place and fixing it up and stuff. And I'm just concerned that the water would be you know, pitching in that direction towards his property as well. And I know the water in the area, you know, especially this year and this weekend, I think we're going to see an awful lot of water moving in that area. And you know, I think the more that we start building up and, you know, taking away this soil that can absorb the water, the worse it's going to get. I mean, we've already noticed, you know, with the two homes that got put up on King Road, that the water in the backyard, coming through the backyard right down onto Ivy Road, has gotten more and more in recent years.
Amy, you have another hand up.
Yes. Yeah, Mr. Barron, who just spoke of.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. So yes, Jim, we were quite concerned with the water being directed back. We're about the water being directed back, because that would direct it right back onto where our cesspool is. And if you notice that they have up in the right corner there, that there's supposed to be a berm to keep the water running down Ivy so that it does not come across. The water can be quite significant. Certainly in the spring in our crawl space under the house at 10 Ivy, which is next door, there's a good 3 or 4 inches of water that will settle down in there against the back wall. I don't see any place to put dirt while they're constructing this on the property. I think it's going to have to be taken elsewhere to do that. And I would like any rain coming off of the roof to go into a dry well if there's a house produced here. And I think that the water needs to be directed down Ivy Street and then down along Lake Street. I think it needs to be directed down into that catch pond. Otherwise, you're just going to have water running down the road to the lake. So those are certainly some of our concerns, and when we were talking with the planning board. The PVC pipe, my understanding is that was a way of monitoring the groundwater levels. And so that's what that was set in there for. And it was cleared out some time ago, but it's all pretty growing up at this point in time. So that's what we've been dealing with, trying to make sure that the water does not come back to ours. And we had raised the same issue that even the groundwater, because of the compression of the dirt on top of the walls is going to be like 6 foot high, as one of you noted how many of those 24-inch blocks there are. So you're looking like a 6 foot wall there, and the compression of that is going to probably direct some of the groundwater coming down back over to our place. And yes, that was a concern of ours as well. So that's the input that we have on our end of things.
I'm curious to know if there shouldn't be a swale on the property line.
It was one of the things that we discussed, and it certainly would be a secondary backup. Duplicity is always a good idea, so that if anything breaches over the berm, that it would be directed down towards the catch pond. But our septic is right next to the property line there, and so if the water starts coming down across our area, our cesspool can certainly be over flooded pretty easily. So it's important to have that berm on the road, keep anything from coming there if we're going to continue with this project, and make sure that that type of thing does not happen.
I'm sorry, did you say you have a cesspool or a septic system?
Cesspool.
Any other comments?
I think a site walk, is certainly something we should do. Just one other thing that comes to mind with the stormwater, we're going to basically remove, directly up gradient of our wetlands buffer and our wetlands that we're using to treat the lake. And, I know we restrict, pesticides and herbicides on the lawns by virtue of the order of conditions. However, based on lawns I see in the vicinity of buffer zones, it can be problematic. And so I do think we should do a site walk, and maybe Tim can look into, maybe some more robust stormwater controls or ways that they can infiltrate stormwater on the site rather than having it run off, particularly since, there's a retaining wall in the buffer zone that's going to impact the hydrology of the site and of the area. And what I'm hearing from, obviously, I have an aerial photo up as well. I'm just, looking around while we also listen to this, and, running down the street, running down Lake Drive is certainly something that can occur. If the site, I would imagine, is engineered to be dry for the occupant, the drainage is going to go off to the other, off to the sides to Ivy Road and cause erosion to Lake Drive and run into the lake, or drainage towards conservation land. And, a treatment system that we, the town put a lot of money and effort into creating and, now maintaining. And then, also we, when we've had other projects in the lake neighborhood on tiny lots, we have asked for the applicant to look into making sure they aren't dumping all their stormwater onto the neighbors. So I would want to see that looked into as an interim measure, and then maybe a site walk after the snow melts, like next week or something. So those are my thoughts.
Certainly, I can discuss that with the engineer. So did you want to set a date right now while we're all looking at each other, or did you kind of want to wait to see what the weather's going to do? My question to the commission.
I think we were curious if there was still snow cover. Maybe some of the neighbors can tell us.
Yes, there is still snow cover on that property. It's still pretty shaded for most of the trees that are on the conservation lot itself. There might be some patches of it that's open, but I know along Ivy Road, there's a very large snowbank and still sitting there, and also down Lake Drive as well. And that's holding back some of that snow and keeping that cold pack in there.
Right. So I think we should wait a week, as much as I think we're all keen to get out with the nice weather at the end of the week.
I agree. I think we should wait. Hey, I got a question. Is this lot been the same original owner, or was it recently sold, or what's a little bit of history of it?
I'm not certain on who owned it prior to Ron Raffi. All I know is he owns it now, but that's definitely something I could easily look into.
Yeah, and I'm just interested.
I would like, this is Greg Barron. I would like to be on the site walk to help answer any questions. So if I could be kept in that loop, I'd appreciate it.
Chairman, do you want to address that? James?
Only if you got permission of the landowner, I guess.
Yeah, it is private property. I would have to contact the applicant and discuss it with him.
I'd be happy to talk to you from my property.
I would as well. Or from the street.
Yeah.
We appreciate your understanding, but it is private property, so even commissioners have to have permission. So, okay. I know we still have, go ahead.
Seems like until we consider a site walk, just kind of need to table this for the time being until snow leaves.
Okay. Amy, do you have a date that this would be continued to?
Well, it'd be the 22nd.
Okay.
So did you want to try to set something up for next week, or wait and see what happens on Monday?
I think we should wait
till after the 22nd.
You want to kind of preemptively set a date, and then, we'll kind of take it from there. If the day before we get a foot of snow, we could postpone it. Or did you just kind of want to,
Yeah, I think historically we would wait until the site is clear, and then we'll go ahead and Amy can kind of circle around with everyone. And we appreciate your time tonight.
Sure.
Yeah.
Is that all for tonight?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for everyone else's participation as well.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a good night, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you, you as well.
You too.
Good night.
All right. And thank you to the board.
Night.
Thank you.
Okay. We have a public hearing notice of intent, 228 Howard Ave, R08-420, Mass DEP file number 204-9XX, construction of a detached garage. So we don't even have a number yet, I guess. So who's going to speak to this?
Good evening. This is Brandon Ducharme with Dave D. Ross Associates here on behalf of the applicant, Michael Torrielli, who I believe is also joining us tonight. As you've said, we've gone ahead and we filed a notice of intent for proposed detached garage. 228 Harwood is an existing 2.8 acre lot on the north side of the road. There's an existing 3-bedroom house with driveway and septic system that was built on around 2006, kind of in that time frame there. And
Brandon, if you have a map, you have a plan you can throw up?
Actually, I'm on an iPad. I apologize. Yeah, do you have a way to put that up?
Let me see if I can go find it while you talk.
Yeah. So
Sure, yeah.
just
I
for
could
future
probably do it too if necessary.
Yeah, for future
That'd be even
reference,
better.
we did make accommodations on the last meeting, but the applicant or the engineer should have plans.
Oh, and I apologize. I didn't realize that. Yes. So,
We put them up for you on the last meeting too.
and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Just give me a sec, please. It's in my other
Yeah.
email.
So just to kind of continue, so we've been obviously working with the homeowner to locate a proposed garage on the property in a way that we feel best meets the performance standards of the local bylaw.
I'm gonna need a sec, Brandon, to find the official one.
Sure.
I think I might have it.
Oh, thank you, Amy.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, great. So as you can see on the lower portion of the screen, there is Harwood Ave. The existing house is set back a little bit into the lot, yep, right where that arrow is there. And the septic system is located in the front. There's an existing driveway that kind of comes between those two stone walls there's a garage located on the left-hand side. There's a bordering vegetated wetland, which is essentially a wooded swamp there in the back. We've delineated the limit of that, and you can see the corresponding 100-foot buffer zone, which comes in there, encompasses the existing house, comes about up to the septic system and across the driveway there. And then we've also, the other boulder dash line is the 50-foot wetland setback, which runs about at what the existing tree line is. There's a little bit of landscaped lawn on the left-hand side of the driveway as we look at the plan. So the proposed garage is a 24 by 30-foot garage, two-car garage. Actually, it's one bay, over 18-foot door. And one of the challenges was setting this back far enough off the existing driveway to accommodate a turning movement, which, typically when designing something like that, you're looking at about a 30-foot turning area to be able to get out of the garage bay and maneuver onto the driveway or road, whatever it is. And obviously we're trying to keep the existing structure outside of the 50-foot offset. So what we've done is we've kind of slid that forward and we've angled the garage slightly, as you can tell, to kind of allow for a better turning movement into the proposed garage. There's also an existing water line. It's on municipal water. So the water service line goes out to Harwood Ave and it comes through, right that front corner of the garage. So as part of this, in order to keep it as close to that existing driveway as we can, is we're going to have to pick up that existing line and relocate it slightly. So it'll go a little bit closer towards the existing driveway and kind of go around the proposed garage location. The way the existing tree line is there, like you can tell by looking at the topo that it's pretty flat as you kind of look at that area. And there's an existing tree line that just clips the back left-hand corner of the proposed garage there. It goes about 15 feet into the existing wood brush line there. We've also incorporated into the design of the proposed garage a couple things. First of all, we put a roof line recharge trench off the back of the garage. The way that roof pitches, it's essentially the ridge line goes along the 30-foot the longer, so it pitches towards the front and towards the back. So we're going to pick up any rooftop runoff that comes off the roof there in the back. And then we've also shown a recharge trench along the lower side of the proposed section of driveway. And essentially that'll pick up any of that roof runoff that comes off of off the front of the garage there. So as you look at the amount of new driveway within the 100-foot buffer zone, it's a small little triangle there kind of in front of the garage. Most of the impervious area is actually the garage itself. So as you kind of look at that from a stormwater standpoint, it's mostly, clean rainwater coming off the roof that will be infiltrating through that trench. We've also shown a proposed stockpile just during construction. And again, I don't anticipate a lot of earthwork with this project. As I mentioned, it's relatively flat through there. But should they, when they come in and strip top and subsoil, we've shown an area where they can stockpile that outside of the 100-foot buffer zone, and obviously upgrade it to the proposed erosion control barrier, which is that heavy dash line that kind of goes along the limit of work. So at the closest point, the back corner of that garage is about 58 feet from the wetland edge, and we've kept the erosion control outside of that 50-foot offset. So at this point, I'd like to open up any questions that we can answer. I'm happy to.
Anybody got
sorry.
any questions?
I'm sorry, come again?
Has anybody got any questions from the
Oh,
board?
yeah. The other thing I was going to add is I did notice, like as you referenced in the beginning, we do not have a DEP file number yet. I got on the website today, and it's interesting. They had one comment that basically said they hadn't received the fee yet, but we have the returned certified mailing that says they did receive it. So I've got an email into them just to see kind of what the deal is with that. But obviously we are awaiting a DEP file number.
Can you talk about the pitch of the roof, which way that water's going to be coming off?
Sure. Yeah. So as you look at the garage and you're kind of looking at it where the driveway goes in, the front is going to pitch forward towards the driveway. And then the back half is going to obviously go back. So instead of it being pitched side to side, it's pitched front to back, if that makes sense.
They're going to be an A roof or a shed roof?
Shed, yeah.
Or a salt box, I guess what I should say.
It doesn't sound like a salt box. It sounds like it has a peak in the middle.
Yeah.
Correct. There's
Forward,
one ridge line that runs down the middle there. Yeah.
And where's the entrance to pull into the garage?
We've got those great arrows. Yeah, right there. Yep. It's a 18-foot wide single door. So essentially you could get two vehicles through it, but it's a single door there. Yep.
So is this going to be in addition to the other garage, or is there going to be, are you going to demolish the other garage, or is this?
No, the other garage is under my home. This will be in addition to that garage. We do have, it's a 2-car garage under the house, and we do have more than 2 vehicles, so we wanted storage for the other 2.
Seems like an 8-foot door would be pretty narrow. I would think you'd want something a little wider than that, especially you got to move them side to side.
Sorry, just to clarify, that's an 18. So it's a larger door.
Oh.
Yeah.
Can I ask the obvious question? Was it looked at to put on the other side of the driveway so that there wasn't an impact?
Yeah, good question. The answer isn't easily seen by the plan, but essentially what that septic system is it's actually a raised or mounted system. So the breakout grading or the finished grade at that septic system is quite a bit higher than the driveway. And obviously we can't excavate into the limit of that breakout grading, obviously, because, that's where the septic effluent gets recharged through. And also there's a setback requirement by Title V. We have to be at least 10 feet off of the closest point of that last trench there. So when you put those offsets and you look at, there's no way we could set the garage at the elevation of the driveway in order to get vehicles out of it, just due to the existing grade dictated by the septic system.
Are there stakes in the ground now for the garage?
No.
If I may just make one other point, that originally my plan was to build off of my existing home. I wanted to build off the existing bay in my family room, but when the house was built in 2006, it was already put within the, it looks like it's out of it now, but the original plan, it was I think 34 feet at its closest spot to the wetlands. So there was no way that I could possibly do anything off the existing house. So this is kind of my plan B.
Yeah, I think the issue might have been is if you look, you can see that darker line that kind of goes around the house, which is the 50-foot, which, you really can't get a structure inside of that. So that really kind of eliminates any kind of expansion, either to the side or rear there.
Right.
Is there any room out behind the house?
There are wetlands out there too. I know that.
Yeah, as you look at the back, I mean, in order to be able to get a driveway out and around the building, and then, to get a building site that'd be not only more impact to the buffer zone than where we have it, but it would also be closer to the wetland resource area.
Brandon, did you look at the wetlands across the street and measure your 150 off of that as well? Just wondering about the stockpile area.
Yeah, I could look at that to see exactly how far it is. That right away for Harwood is it's about 50 feet. So yeah, we can look at that to see how close it is.
It's hard to tell. I know there's wetlands across the street there, but it's hard to tell, if it's something that needs to be incorporated into your plan. So I just figured I'd ask if you looked at it.
Nope.
Okay.
Typically, if it's obvious, we try not to flag on other people's property, but if we can at least have the survey crew kind of pick it up. But in this instance, we don't have anything located, but I could certainly take another look over there and see if what's there and how far it is, certainly.
So I know, I'm just, the thought is, I know some wetlands are right up against the road across Harwood. So if that's the case, it would be a, pretty easy measurement.
Sure.
But just with respect to the stockpile area, and in general, we wouldn't want runoff from the stockpile running down the road into storm drains or wetlands either. So I'm assuming your plan has some provisions for erosion control around your stockpile area.
Yeah, we just kind of extended the limit of the erosion control up to the lot line there, and if it's tough to tell, we've got topo around the building and kind of from the driveway in, but if you look at it on the site, essentially it's going to pitch back towards the road, towards the property. So anything coming, any stormwater that passed through that area we're showing the stockpile would actually be kind of heading directly towards the wetland, which we've got the straw wattles kind of in between that and the pile.
I don't think there are any I don't know, for whatever it's worth, if it's helpful or not, but I don't think there are any storm drains anywhere near my house on Harwood Ave, at least that I can see.
Has the corners of the garage been staked yet?
No, I asked the same thing, but we would ask him to do that because it's new construction. We do a site visit. And then you could look at that stockpiling area as well. And then maybe they can address Julie's question in regards to adjacent wetlands.
At least put a stake in the middle of the stockpile area?
Sure.
Yeah, there's enough known features out there that, I can pretty easily, I can lay out at least even a couple corners of that garage just to give you an idea, not only where the the front line of that garage is, but also kind of looking at, where it goes into the existing brush line, and then we can certainly, put something kind of right in the middle of where that stockpile is.
Can
Do
you
you
pick
know
that
whether
other-
there's snow there now or not? Is it all?
It's mostly melted. It should be melted the rest of this, at the end of this week, but I'd be happy to move it if necessary. I have a little plow.
Are there wetlands flags visible?
Yes.
Okay.
They were just delineated again, I think 2 months ago.
Are there any plans to have water at the garage, for a hose for washing your car or anything like that?
That's up in the air. If anything, it would just be a spigot on the outside, but nothing really beyond that.
Okay.
I think we're at kind of a standstill until we have a site visit there.
Quick question for Brandon. Brandon, can you go into detail on those infiltration trenches? Is it just, was it a couple feet of stone, or is there perforated pipe in them? What?
Yeah, pretty much just so. So there's two details on the plan, but just to kind of recap what it shows is, essentially you've got a 2 foot deep by 2 foot wide, 3/4 to 1.5 inch wash crushed stone. And obviously you're gonna dig that trench. You'll wrap it in filter fabric, put your stone in, and then there's probably just some smaller stone there on the top. But essentially it's just a 2 foot by 2 foot trench that will be filled with stone.
Okay. So no,
it's pretty similar. Sorry, pretty similar on the rooftop drainage. It's coming off the roof like that. It's only a foot deep and about 3 feet wide, so it kind of to carry out beyond the overhang of the roof.
Okay. I just see those notes that it mentions a perforated pipe. You're adding crushed stone to the top of the pipe. Could be a different drawing or something like that.
Yes. Yeah. No, I see. No. So typically, if the only thing that would probably incorporate the pipe going in there would be if the elevations worked with the frost wall, but no, I don't anticipate there being the need for any pipes in there. And again, as we look at kind of the area of watershed that this is picking up, I mean, 24 by 30 garage is probably 720 square feet. So, not a ton of area, but obviously, we wanted to have something there to kind of pick that up and recharge it. And again, also pointing out that it is pretty flat in and around there. So, I'm not concerned with a situation where, we've got steep grades, and if all of a sudden now we're directing, higher concentrations of runoff and, risk of erosion or something scour as it gets down towards the wetland. I don't see that either.
I guess we're kind of at a standstill until you get it staked and you,
Well, I think we can try and put the two that, the one that we have to do on Lake with this one, when we can just try and do them both back to back. Get more daylight once we have that snow melt.
I can make myself available at any time.
Thank you. Well, if you
I'm
can let me
obviously
know.
available, yeah, and obviously I can get that staked pretty quick. So that certainly isn't going to impact us. Putting up a date. It's really just going to be waiting for the snow.
Okay. If you want to just let Amy know when you have the stakes, that would be great.
Sure. Yep.
okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
May I just ask one last question? And I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but obviously I have some plans in place that are on hold. Are there any major issues that anybody sees here? Or is this something that we feel like, as long as the site walk matches up to the plan, that would be good to go? I want to make sure that the people that I have on hold, know that we're at least heading in the right direction, because they want to move on to other projects. So I want to keep them happy.
What's the board's opinion?
This will be continued to the 22nd.
Okay.
All right.
I don't think we can make a call on that.
All weather oriented and weather permitted.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Yep. Need to go back to the beginning of our meeting. Anybody get omissions or corrections to the minutes?
I had
Yeah, I got some edits from Kyle.
a couple just grammatical. I had one that was
You went on to mute again, Kyle.
all right. It was at the last sentence on the second page, running into the third page. It discussed the ledge that they observed. I think that's what the intent of Amy's sentence was. That the ledge was 3 feet deep in the area. So I just added some wording to make it a little bit more clear. And then at the top of page 3, when we made a motion to issue the order conditions, there was just a copied comment from the one above it where it said to accept the proposed budget, which obviously we'll just able to take that out.
Anybody else?
I move that we accept the minutes as amended.
Do we hear a second?
Second. Carl.
Carl, you want to do your thing? You want to do your roll call?
Yeah, I have it unmute, sorry. Sarah Seward,
Sarah Seward, aye.
James Pickard,
James Pickett, aye.
Julie Rupp,
Whoa, I was not prepared. I'm way out of typical order. Julie Rupp, aye.
sorry. I'm just following the.
It's all good.
We are in the zone. Brian Crowley,
Brian Crowley, aye.
Andrew Samaco,
Andrew Samarco, aye.
Kyle Maxfield,
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
and Carl Melberg, aye.
Okay. Carried. Guess we'll move on. I see the next thing on the list here is ID badges.
I don't know if anybody wants an ID badge, if you lost yours, or if you want a new one. Like I said, just send me or Diane Corey a headshot, and she's getting them made up for everybody again.
Okay. I haven't lost mine yet.
Yeah, but have you used it yet? I didn't even use mine yet.
I think mine expired like 2 years ago.
Yeah, I
They
don't,
don't expire.
I don't even know what the
Never
date
had
is
one.
on mine.
Actually, I guess they do have dates on them.
Yeah.
Okay.
If
Wellington.
you want them, send me a picture.
Okay. Wellington Cooper Trail Connection. What's the scoop on that?
You know, I was trying to remember why I had that on there. Can you see this okay?
Erosion control too, or the erosion from some of the storms.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're going to build that.
So this is Wellington Circle, the development, and the parcel in yellow is what will be the open space that will be given to the town. So the bike trail, I don't know how well you can see my cursor. The bike trail just kind of comes through here, and you well, actually, let me go down one, sorry.
Is it going to follow the existing crossing that's there now?
Right, so the bike trail comes through here and up there. So the Cooper side has largely been built to some degree. And then Steve Marsh will be doing this piece of it over here. And somehow he's going to get up this hill to the cul-de-sac. And then probably as a separate action, kind of phase one, the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee has asked the Community Preservation Committee for funds for the footbridge to go across here. This is where there were 2 or 3 culverts that Steve Marsh had taken out at your request, a span footbridge across there, probably kind of similar to what's over at Cloverdale. This bridge, I'm assuming, could be done as a request for determination of applicability, but let me know if you disagree with that. And I assume that depending on what he has to do with this trail, that might actually be a notice of intent to do the rest of this.
Is the bike trail just dirt?
It's it has been gravelled. It's very solid. I'm not sure how deep the gravel is, and it has been a while, so it's sort of vegetated over. This map doesn't show the wetlands. The trail is not in the wetland.
As it, I suppose at some point you're gonna need signage on it too, won't you?
Need, I'm sorry, what?
Signage?
Well, at either end, yeah.
I mean, to have people off of other people's property, I mean, it may be a public way, but you don't want people wandering across someone's lawns or anything either. Especially up where the house lot is, I would think.
There's gonna be a big grade change between there. But yeah, that'll be up to the developers, either Steve Marsh or the Fields or the Cooper Farm, to do what signage they feel they need.
Who did you have in mind for doing the crossing? Is that a scout project, or is that something that will be done by the town, do you think?
We're circling around on it right now, because we're trying to get the money into the CPC to meet the warrant articles. It's a little, we didn't get any of the grants, or they didn't get any of the grants. I wasn't really involved in them before this. So we've really retracted it a little bit. And so now it's just basically sort of a footbridge, not a whole box culvert piece of it. So CPC was asked for, I think, Rick, I don't know if Rick is still here or not. I think it was something like 17,000.
Right.
Which would include getting someone to do the work. And I think Steve Marsh was going to donate the expense for the materials itself. And we are still looking into how much volunteers can do to pull that back a little bit.
Okay.
And there's all sorts of, so my main question tonight was do you think an RDA for a footbridge that it would be, the stream is maybe 3 feet wide, and it's actually kind of a deep trench. So we're talking about almost a 12-foot span, because the secondary banks kind of slope down before it really hits the thing.
Is this where your telephone poles would come into play?
No telephone poles. I'm still kind of looking into that and seeing when telephone poles could be used, or how long their leaching issue is. We was trying to have access to them, but I understand the commission doesn't like seeing those. So we would put them up similar to what the Cloverdale Boardwalk is, 2 culverts, plastic culverts on either side as the sills with the planking across them.
Mm-hmm.
And then a ramp, wooden ramp down.
It would seem as though if you got to do a notice of intent for some of the part of it, why wouldn't you include a notice of intent and put it all together?
Ideally, yes, but we have no idea what or when the rest of this is going to go.
Okay.
So the original plan was to do all one permit, just wrap it all in notice of intent. But we may end up just needing to get this crossing done while we have CPC funds to do it, basically. And Steve Marsh is, I believe, motivated to do this part of it, but you never know when they're going to run into trouble and their schedule's going to go off. He's building right now.
So he's there, got his equipment there. He's probably going to want to do it more or less where everything's there and is in.
Exactly. And this is a very walkable trail right now. So if worst case, if nothing except for this little footbridge happens, you can still get all the way through.
Okay.
Worst case.
So it seems like we should move forward with the footbridge, because I could also envision, the cart and the horse, like who's waiting for whom. So it seems like if there's funding for it, then it seems like moving forward we'll get the project in motion at a minimum, or at least so we can say our piece is done. When are you going to finish your piece?
Yeah, so I will, I'll put off the permitting as long as possible, and if I can wrap them into one, I will. I'd probably prepare the permits for the trail also with Steve knowing I need the engineer to give me the plans, how it's going to be built, what the cross section looks like. Rick Finley already did a nice kind of plan of what the footbridge would look like. So we have that, which I think is more than adequate for what we need.
Okay, sounds like you're potentially working on it.
So hopefully one day you'll see it.
Okay, what about the town forest trail permitting?
That was another, I'm not gonna be able to do this, am I? Permitting question. I have to start over again. So, well, anyway, if you picture it, there is a scout who is willing to build the trail through town forest. He would not do any of the footbridges. That would be a separate project somehow. So the trail and basically the scouts walking up and down are going to be walking up and down through the wetland, doing some brush clearing, not adding any material, not changing the grades. So again, I wasn't sure if you would want to see some kind of permit application for that or not. I was going back and forth, whether it would need maybe an RDA or something.
Too bad they didn't do it when the ground was frozen.
Well, yeah, the ground was frozen and then we got 3 feet of snow, so it was impossible.
It seems like with the RDA, at least there's a written handle on it. And also, if anybody questions it, you can say it's been approved.
Yep. All right. I think
Is that
kind of makes
agreeable
sense.
with the rest of the board?
Yeah, that sounds good.
How wide
And
is the trail going to be?
It's maybe realistically a 3 or 4 foot wide trail, just a trampled trail. They may go as far as having to clear sort of, the box out to worst case, maybe 10 feet if they need to go chase a witch hazel that's falling over the trail.
There's going to be a lot of clearing.
Yeah, most of it's pretty open. There's a bunch of nasty tree falls when you first walk in from Harwood. And then it's not too terrible after that, really rocky.
Right.
But
Well, maybe when we're on Harwood, we could take a peek at it too.
yeah, definitely. It's been flagged. I haven't been out there recently to see if they're still there. And
Andrew, you would have to bring boots, not sneakers.
Oh yeah.
I'll see. I'll consider it.
Or maybe waders or something.
One other question with this. I know it's under select board control. Do we need to formally ask them for permission to cut the trail?
The scout is going to go to the select board.
Okay.
So he's going to deal with that.
Excellent.
And town forest is mostly underwater, right?
Correct.
The back part of it is not. There are certainly some wet areas.
So how many crossings is that going to be that are not being done?
Well,
so that was happening later.
You'd always have to wear boots if you're going to go in there.
Well, it depends how many footbridges we can get in there. I am not going to be able to pick this up quickly. If we can get our act together, I could do this all as a notice of intent with the footbridges, with the understanding the footbridges might not go in for 2 or 3 years. I'm not sure if I can get my act together to do that, and might just go with the RDA.
Yeah.
So sorry, Julie, do you have a map that shows the trail?
I do. Hang on a second here. As Tim or whoever was mentioned, once you're out of it, you have to start all over again sometimes.
So is there concern about the wetland trampling if they're clearing a lot of vegetation and going in and out and in and out? Is that a concern?
Can you see this? Have I shared this yet?
Well, at one point you could get in there a long, long time ago. So
Was there a logging road or something in this area,
I think so. I mean, it's been a long time. Yep.
So this red line here is what the scout would probably be doing.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a long one. And I'm gonna have to get in there and actually flag the wetlands at some point. I think they're a little more extensive than what you're seeing. And then especially if the Glavy parcel comes in, which is over here at the bottom, we could add this loop at some later date, which would then extend over to Glavy. And my biggest wish is that if Glavy happens and we get a nice big fat grant, put a really nice boardwalk through here. It's a beautiful red maple swamp, really wet in there, but that's a pipe dream.
Your bridging, is that anything you use any of the materials that you managed to salvage?
You bet. So we're kind of planning on using that stuff probably 4 or 5 times over. So we have to come up with some sort of priority about where to put them. The Cloverdale Trail needs to be extended. Hartwell definitely needs something. And then there's this. Those are kind of the 3. And actually there's one at the north end of Yap that could use a footbridge, but are almost planks to get through the wet area at the north end. But that's a long carry.
Yeah, it's important though. I mean, you see the use, you know, from everyone getting outdoors, which is great, but you know, the use on the trails, and especially when the trails get wet. And you know, I'm from upstate New York originally, and you know, we did a lot of trail maintenance, and people just start getting wide. Once it gets wet, it gets wide, and then the whole thing's destroyed, you know, and just it makes me nervous. And even at the end of those, you know, the Cloverdale trails, like when the wood stops and then everyone dumps out into the mud again. And it's great that people are getting outdoors, but just I don't know what we can do to have more trail protection.
Yeah, there's been a lot of wear and tear, and it takes a lot of maintenance. I think there's some areas in Long Lake that have had some where the trails are just getting wider and wider as people are getting out of the muddy spots, and the bikes have done a lot of damage too. So
we can also, for awareness, run strings and stay on trails. So you can even just use, you know, surveying flags. So I've seen that before, just especially during the wettest part, to try and kind of funnel them down.
Yeah, and I was thinking if there's certain sections of trails that maybe should just be closed in the spring.
Right.
But you got to really plan that out ahead of time.
Yeah.
Or could we do more boardwalks over those wet areas so that they stay on the trail?
Absolutely. We just need to buy all the lumber and get the work done. That's the problem.
Okay.
There's a lot of boardwalks. We have materials. We just don't have people to do it.
Maybe
which is in part why I was pushing to have that bike trail built by someone else, so that I can hit up the land stewards for something either at you know, town forest or someplace else.
Okay. Any other updates or administrative action that you need to be thinking about?
I didn't have anything else. You saw the land steward reports came in.
Okay.
If you want some fun reading, so.
Okay.
And I'm getting, there's some people, the senior tax, I want to talk to Andrew about that. The senior tax hour folks, I've got a couple who are going to do an inventory of the properties for me. Just the entrances. Do they have a kiosk? Do they have a sign? Is there a gate? You know, what's the combination? Try to get all that onto one place because it's just all over the place.
Oh, perfect.
And Andrew, I don't know if you wanted to just keep working with, it wasn't Dick Buckles. Who was it?
Don Waite, right?
Don Waite, yeah. Have him just keep going through you because that's what he's used to doing. Is that
absolutely.
Okay.
Can I say something real quick? Just at the beginning, we were talking about, you know, re-looking at the regs and the bylaws and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, we see every project that comes in here. It's like the 100-foot buffer is always conceded when they show up. You know, it's like, don't you find that annoying that we start at the 50 every time and the 100-foot buffer doesn't exist from any other department? It's like slightly annoying. Maybe take that time if we're going to take a look at things. I don't know the last time when they said the 50-foot no disturb. There'd be any value in putting in an extra couple of feet there, since they want to start at the edge of the 50-foot, you know, at the edge of the no disturb. call it the 60-foot no disturb, but I don't know. It just feels like we always start at a point of loss when it comes to the buffer zone.
I agree, and I think we can also try and be really diligent that we have to get out to these sites and really make sure that we have eyes on. Harwood's a perfect example where it's very wet.
Well, I would just point out that before the 50-foot no disturb, they were starting at the 5 feet and always wanting to push to the very edge.
I'm not complaining that we have 50. 50 is awesome, but
I get what you're saying, but it definitely is better than it was. But maybe we want to consider a little more. I don't know. Surrounding towns have more than, or a lot of them have more than 50.
I'm just saying if it's coming up.
Just making sure that the 50-foot is not where you put your erosion controls. And Brandon kind of put this. I said, don't put the erosion controls on the 50 because hay bales are 2 feet wide. Put them, at the 52 at least. So, but yeah, I mean, it's a bright line.
Well, I think you could even rebrand it like the 10 feet and call it a recharge or a revegetation, or have something before you make that hard transition to the 50. So just call it something different.
The grading
you can't call it a 100-foot buffer because no one pays attention to that at all.
Right.
Well, the 100-foot has always just brought them into us, not necessarily. I don't think it necessarily means they purposefully go within the 150, put their house, but just, I mean, they have to come in if they're within the 100. So I don't know. It puts us there.
Yeah, it's jurisdictional for a reason. And one thing that I'm running into for a site we're working at, we have to do appraisals and restoration. And it's, if we're taking down someone's 70-foot oak, that can be like a $30,000 appraisal. And it counts if we are disturbing the root zone so much that the tree is not going to survive. And so for my investigation, getting contamination or getting munitions cleaned up, I'm on the hook to, we are on the hook as taxpayers, I guess, to, based on the way the projects are funded, to make these homeowners whole because we're taking their 70-foot oak tree out and all the functions and the natural resources damages. And so that is a thing. That's not something out of left field. And I know it's something that has come up a few times, like, okay, you're right on the 50, but you're not going to, you don't consider these trees 5 feet in as an issue, but the root zone is going to be destroyed on one side and it's effectively ruining it. So I do think, to Matt's point, we can, there's certainly precedent for that being an issue for other types of projects.
Yeah, especially the trees. There was just that article about in Bunker Hill in Boston, they're taking out, I don't even know how many acres of trees and what that's going to do for the temperature change in around the campus.
The other thing I keep encountering is the northern long-eared bats, which because of the types of projects, a lot of them are exempt, but they nest in our area. The window is generally June 1st to July 30th for the northern long-eared bat, and they nest in the bark of trees, and it's an endangered species. And so I know we're looking at, staring down projects that are going to be, major deforestation, to get housing in and whatnot. And, it just seems like there's some room, to make some headway in some of these areas.
Who does that inventory? Like, who would be the specialist that would come in to verify their habitat on any of our projects?
They're really difficult to figure out if they're there.
Okay.
It's not an easy thing because it's, it requires having equipment out for, a certain length of time and sonar, and they're not easy to find.
Carl, do we have multiple species in the area? Because they can come sit in my backyard on a nice summer evening and watch them go to town above my house for the bugs. I'm sure that yes, I'm sure there's multiple.
species of
Yeah,
bat.
like the big brown bat and the little brown bat
okay.
and some other. Yeah, but you can have your kids like throw pebbles
Oh, yeah.
and they'll come.
Yep.
They'll dive there.
Yep.
I love seeing the bats.
Oh, it's awesome. We absolutely sit out every summer, spring, and watch them.
Yeah, the long ears they're just, I don't know. I agree with Julie. They just, I don't know how you prove that they're using those trees.
How,
it goes beyond us,
they
right?
prefer?
Oh, it goes beyond us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there types of trees with the types of bark they prefer, or?
Yeah, like shaggy bark is just well established as bat habitat in general, and that's consistent with the northern long-eared bat.
Wait, the shaggy bark?
Yep.
You
That's
mean,
the shaggy hickory.
Yeah, like a shagbark hickory, like the grooves.
So I think that can also be an education point for us. So when we're making suggestions of trees, we should correlate that to the bats, especially on some of these waterfront properties. Okay.
I wonder if we could have a bat specialist come in and talk to us.
I mean, at a minimum, you can not have construction being done during those periods of time that Julie was talking about.
Yeah, so it was just
During the construction period?
That could be at a minimum, without knowing if they're there or not.
Yeah, there's a difference between construction and deforestation, tree clearing. I mean, you're building a house, that's one thing, but they're working on development behind us, and they cleared it all out last summer, just in the time frame Julie was talking about when we first talked about bats. I was like, I looked behind me and I was like, oh, they're doing it right now, and now's that time.
I mean, I think they're on the state list. I know they're definitely federal, but they're probably state list too.
I'm sure they are.
So maybe someone from the state, we could try and touch base, see if someone could give us some information.
Do any of the other towns have any bylaws or guidelines that really address habitat? Such as like a bat or an owl or things like that? No.
I don't know.
I mean, because wetland wildlife habitat is covered, but you know, that wouldn't cover an owl per se. It's usually the wetland dependent species that they're narrowly covering.
Okay. Well, I hope everyone can dig out their sunblock this week. Be careful. It's going to be the first one.
And let me know if you're starting to hear the peepers or the wood frogs.
Matt.
Are you going to have it's going to salamander
brigade?
Yep, it's up and running. I got like 15 or 20 new people signed up.
Nice.
So maybe, I don't know if it's gonna, how much rain we may or may not get on Friday, but this could be a really good week for them.
Oh,
Matt, are you aware of there's been some research done to establish the American chestnut? They've come up with some sort of a genetic thing to help take care of the some sort of a virus or something that's been killing them.
Yeah, that's contentious. There's definitely two schools of thought on that one.
Bring on GMO.
Yeah.
Thank you, Monsanto.
Yeah, exactly.
They're waiting for a USDA to approve it, I think, from what I read from one of the farm magazines.
We'll see.
Interesting times.
Yeah. If there's no more business, can somebody make a motion for us to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Oh.
Don't rush to it, folks.
Kyle got it. Kyle moved.
Wait a second.
I think Andrew's seconded already.
Okay,
Second.
good. Guess you gotta have a roll call, Kyle.
Carl Melberg, aye. Sarah Seward.
Seward, aye.
James Pickard.
James Pickett, aye.
Julie Rupp.
Julie Rupp, aye.
Brian Crowley.
Ryan Crowley, aye.
Andrew Smarco,
Andrew Samarco, aye.
Kyle Maxfield.
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Okay, sounds unanimous.
Okay, night all.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night, everyone.
Yeah.
Night, guys.